Today's women, lost, manipulating, vindictive, gloating, and worst of all, unaccountable. I can tell you personally that when I was going to high school, a lot of women would start bragging about when they could make a man do whatever they wanted. A lot of my friends would brag about their boyfriends who they would beat up in the hallways for getting them the wrong gift. I've watched so many guys desperately do anything for women who could have given less of a flying, you can complete the word about them. And more importantly, and more dangerously, I've seen so many cases of guys in my high school, one of which was a personal friend, and he got in a relationship with a girl whose parents were very conservative. She knew her parents were conservative. She knew they wouldn't like him. She knew she was possibly getting into a lot of trouble, still got in the relationship with him. Didn't tell him what to say to her parents. Her parents said that they didn't want her to see him again. She kept breaking those rules, didn't tell him what her parents said, and then he ended up doing a lifetime in jail for well, not a lifetime in jail. Ended up doing 3 months in jail. Juvie. We were minors. They wouldn't do that to anyone underneath 18 for something like this, but ended up doing 3 months in juvie for breaking a court order of protection placed on him by said girl. By the way, her parents would not have known he had broken that if it weren't for the fact that she ran to report him. That is what love gets you, people. This is the Glass Floor Podcast. Thank you for being on. My name's Katrina Overfield. This is Tim Goldich. Our podcast is sponsored by NCFM, the National Coalition for Men, which has been around since 1977. They're dedicated to stopping discrimination and stereotypes against men, boys, their families, and the women who love them. And they are non-bipartisan, inclusive, equitable, equal group that support the issues of our men and boys. With that, today's episode, we're focusing on explaining to you the glass floor. The thing that keeps women... The thing that keeps those women in the situation that my friend was in, where they don't have to be accountable for the things they do. Here, Tim Goldich will explain to us, what is this glass floor? Take it away.
Thank you, Katrina. Wow, that's quite a story to tell, and it's certainly indicative of much that we might even call pathological in our culture these days. And much of what we'll be talking about in this series will be something I call gender equalism. There's a new gender-neutral gender politics. It's neither feminism nor masculism. It is a gender-neutral gender politics, which I believe would be much healthier and ultimately address the kinds of issues that you were just talking about. So, okay, let me launch into this about the glass floor. Throughout history, whenever a woman looked up, she perceived what we now call the glass ceiling, a kind of semi-permeable membrane comprised of things like social conditioning and gender roles and, bias, plus various legal and socio-political structures. In looking down, however, she might have noticed that she was walking on a kind of glass floor comprised of all the same stuff as the glass ceiling in myriad ways, both nebulous and concrete, has always tended to thwart woman's rise to the very top. So the glass floor has always tended to safeguard women from sinking to the extreme bottoms of mine shafts, prison cells, foxholes. The glass floor has also acted as a kind of partial insulation between women and the dark side of the world and human nature, including most of life on Earth's most deeply brutal, filthy, arduous, hazardous, and corrupting realities. Through the glass ceiling, a woman could view the tip of the success pyramid and see that it was mostly male-occupied. In looking down over, she could view the vast base of the human pyramid and see that it too was occupied mostly by men. Men, for example, who were taught to, more like trained to kill in order to protect. being killed or maimed by the thousands and millions out on battlefields, many tortured mercilessly in prisoner of war camps for months or years. Many of these men end up on the streets to join the 85% male street homeless. Too many wind up imprisoned. Less than a third of men are veterans, but more than half of the imprisoned are veterans. Thus, veterans all too often join other men to suffer by the thousands and the millions in the penal system. And consider also men obligated for toughness, strength, and courage who, throughout history, have been killed or maimed by the thousands and the millions in hard, hazardous labor. The building of the Panama Canal alone cost the lives of more than 25,000 men. In recent decades, women have comprised 50% of the workforce, but a mere 7% of all work-related fatalities. In keeping with being more loved, women are better protected.
So just to clarify for our viewers, what you are saying is that this glass floor is much like the glass ceiling. What separates them from the men down below, the arduous working men, the soldier, the war prisoner, the prisoner in general, the homeless. But it is what holds them up in the middle ground.
Well, yeah, so look at it this way. All right, so throughout history, one woman's floor has been another man's ceiling. So whenever these men, these war-torn soldiers, these stigmatized prisoners, these disabled laborers, whenever they looked up, the glass ceiling they encountered was the glass floor women walk upon, you see. For every one CEO up here at the very top, there have been many POWs down here. So men have always occupied both extremes, the most and the least enviable positions on earth, the latter in far greater numbers than the former. Meanwhile, women have largely occupied the middle ground. From a gender equalist point of view, that's neither oppression nor victimization. It's an even deal. And moreover, I believe that woman and man are co-equal, co-partners in creating and engaging in and maintaining the deal, because out of the deal, each sex got what it wanted most. And that empties out into some territory that we'll look at in future episodes.
Well, entering some territory that we'll also answer in future episodes, but just to hit it, what would the gender equalist view tend to call this sort of pyramid? Because I'm well aware in feminism, they would say, well, this is all caused by patriarchy, the fact there's men in the bottom, men in the top, and women can never go above this, but don't quite end up here.
Right. Well, okay, so much of what we know and what we believe depends on what vocabulary we have. What's the ideology? What do we know versus what we do not know? So what we have is the word patriarchy, which means literally rule by fathers. What we do not have is a term that accurately connotes the reality of gender. The reality of gender is that it's been a patra matra sensus, a male-female consensus, you see. Throughout history, men and women are and have always been about equal in number, evenly matched, with about equal overall weaponry and efficacy. And therefore, women and men are and have always been equal partners, exerting an equal overall force of influence into the human system, and are therefore equally responsible for outcomes. So this idea of a patriarchy, the way feminism defines it, as a standalone, sort of all evil, all pervasive male power that rules the human world, as thus defined, patriarchy never existed. So when you're looking at male-female balance of power, it's been a patrimatriarchy. And when you're looking at how the human system has been a balance of male and female consensus, where both sexes have agreed to something, that's called a patrimatricensus. An example of that would be the gender system itself.
So, just to clarify, and we'll go into gender roles in another episode as well, the idea that you're saying is that patrimatricensus is what's occurring here, not patriarchy, and it's men and women both having an influence with their individual powers, women being more probably social, men being more money, influence through that way, power,
Yeah.
making this system that seems to be unfair from equal decisions that they both put in.
Yes, yes, yes. If you look at the gender system as it plays out along the respect axis, then you're seeing a patriarchy. You're seeing this vertical thing where men form these clear-cut status hierarchies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for that same thing in the world of women, you're not going to find it, because that's not how women work it. So how does women apply her force of influence? Well, all this comes down to point of view. And from a politicized male point of view, this so-called patriarchy is nothing more than men everywhere set in fierce competition in their efforts to perform, achieve, and succeed their way into having what women are empowered to demand of them. So there's all these ways of reframing gender reality. My biggest complaint about feminism is it's a kind of, well, you see, on the one hand, there's feminism, and on the other hand, there's sort of like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That makes feminism a kind of one-party system. And you could even go so far as to say that feminism is a kind of ideological dictatorship. So we only know what feminism tells us. And so we only know patriarchy. We have to open up to the other half of gender reality, the female power and the male victimization half of gender reality, in order to grasp patramatrocentrism or patramatriarchy. You have to be able to see
both sides of
both
it.
sides, yeah. Right.
And understand that there's not just a one-sided victim mindset or one-sided part to this society.
Yes, I'm sorry, but feminism is poisonous.
To that, I would like to ask, why do you think so many women seem to believe, and maybe not just women, but also feminists, that so many more of the men are up here, even though realistically many more of the population is down there?
Well, there's a name for it. It's called the apex fallacy. And that's where the assumption is that those at the top are representative of men in general, which of course is not the case.
So basically, they have this idea in their minds that that is the representation of the male side.
Yeah.
Of the entire gender that is men.
That's right. So in a sense, what feminism is saying is that the world is this.
Oh Lord.
You see, it's just this and this. And they're not adding that into the equation.
Well, if we could real quick take a step, we're going to look at some stats about men's issues just to give an idea as to what that lower part of the pyramid looks like. Here we have International Men's Day, which is on the 19th of November every year, and these are some of the stats that have come out. These stats are collected from different studies across from some of the Harvard gender study, different departments in different colleges. Some of it's cut up from especially the suicide. You will find at the usually the national suicide website of each country. I believe for us, it's probably on.
It's originally from like the Center for Disease Control and.
Yeah, I'm thinking AFSP, the Suicide Prevention Organization.
Yeah, but government sites. These are not from, you know.
Yeah, and then there's also government stats every year for homelessness and workplace deaths. That'd be the Bureau of Labor, I believe, for workplace deaths. And homicide victims obviously comes from police.
Yeah.
But the point's still made. As of last year, yes, these are not the most up-to-date, 77% of suicides are men. A majority of the homeless are men.
Yeah, it's like 85% of the street homeless. Those are the homeless that don't even have a shelter to go to at night.
85% of street homeless. 78.7% of homicide victims are usually men. Yes, I know a lot of you are watching Dateline, but Dateline is only covering about maybe 30% of homicides. Half of domestic abuse victims happen to be men. It's a 50%, 50-50 split. I realize a lot of organizations you'll find, especially women's organizations, say they don't specify sometimes. They'll say 1 in 3, but it is sort of 50-50. 92.5% of workplace deaths are men.
Yeah.
because of how dangerous some of the work is that they do,
Hmm.
such as miners, oil rigs, divers for the platforms,
Yeah.
electricians, people working in the factories.
Yeah. Yeah. What all 10 of the 10 most hazardous jobs, as well as the bottom 24 or the 25 worst jobs, as rated by the Jobs Rated Almanac, are all 90 to 100% male occupied.
Oof. How come you're not entering that field, women?
Yeah.
Since you say you need to enter more male-centered fields, I mean, join them. Half of all rape victims are men.
Yeah. Now I can just see eyes rolling all over the world on that one. So
Yeah.
maybe you could say a little bit about how that works, how that can be true.
Uh,
All right, I can say a little bit about it.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I can say specifically how it happens sometimes, but
uh-huh.
I mean, it'd be distasteful to some people, but you can actually not have a guy's consent and force him to do something, or you can actually sometimes drug them,
Yeah.
and it will do what it naturally does
Yes.
and just ride the wave. And that is how I'm going to simplify that for YouTube
Yes.
purposes.
Yes. Also contained within this is the rapes within prisons.
Yeah. Yeah, that bar of soap joke is real.
Yeah. Don't drop the soap.
Be-
Right. And speaking of making a joke out of it, isn't that what feminists are enraged about? This call it rape culture because we laugh about rapes. Well, the penalty for rape is equal to second-degree murder. So I mean, it's not exactly taken that lightly. And if you're talking about jokes, rape jokes, most of them are going at it's mostly men that are being laughed at around that,
Yep.
right?
Amongst other things. And the last one, and this is one for anybody who's an activist or a supporter against police brutality, but 96% of those killed by police tend to be men.
Yeah.
And most of them don't hit the news always. Thankfully, recently, there's been more news coverage on the issue of police killings. However, it's only in very brutal cases. It does not cover how many happen on a daily basis, and more specifically, how many of those are men. I'm not trying to bring down Breonna Taylor or any of the other cases. They are just as terrible.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to bring down women as a whole,
Yeah.
but
We're not here to deny the other half of gender reality. We're here to bring in both halves. Okay. We're here to bring in that half of gender reality, which is so widely denied, rejected, vilified, and shut out.
and with that, these are all topics we'll hit more in detail at some point. But right now, just to generally know, this is what is happening to men specifically. These are stats in the US. You can find similar stats in different countries on their websites. Obviously, USA.gov area for stats for us in the United States. You can go to the UK.gov for UK stats, etc., and so forth. These are also collected from the census. A lot of these stats, and what you can do in the census is you can go and download it and pick it apart by age, situation, things that happen each year. Obviously, not all of them for a census. The census doesn't record all of this, but if you look population-wise and by race,
Right.
health, and longevity and things of that sort, longevity for men tends to be lower. Health issues in men tends to be higher.
Yeah.
The list goes on. I said International Men's Day, November 19th every year. The colors, of course, are blue. Stand for men if you wanted to represent. We're not trying to push anything, but this is what happens to that bottom half of the pyramid. Now, to that point, the glass floor, going back to it, do you think you could explain why it's the glass floor, maybe not the glass mirror or the glass window or something like that?
Well, of course, glass floor is a takeoff on glass ceiling, so it's just a flip. In gender equalism, we like to look at everything in gender as mirrored. There's kind of always, or almost always, a mirror opposite to everything in gender. So the mirror opposite of the glass ceiling would be the glass floor. The mirror opposite of anorexia. So what on earth would that be, And if you look at it just kind of as women starving themselves and then go, so Are men starving themselves? And you'd go, no. But if you look at anorexia through a gender political lens, okay, so then it's women, that are following a self-destructive, sometimes even fatal path in their effort to achieve a societal ideal, the Barbie doll figure, right? So what's the mirror opposite of that? Well, that is a male who is abusing steroids and human growth hormones in an effort to achieve a societal ideal of a G.I. Joe physique. She looks in the mirror and thinks she looks fat even when she's emaciated. He looks in the mirror and thinks he looks skinny and weak even when he's bulked out to here. Yeah. Body dysmorphia. And so the point is that these male-female issues, they sort of reflect each other all down the line. We're only concerned with one and not the other because of a fundamental an imbalance that is balanced. And that is basically men are more respected but less loved, women more loved but less respected. And part of what women get out of being more loved is more empathy. So the basic formula is and has always been, toward men, it's accountability sans compassion, which is ruthless. It respects men as autonomous beings that are responsible for their own choices, but it does not love them. Meanwhile, toward women, it's compassion sans accountability, which is infantilizing. Okay, it's loving women. It's honoring that a woman is worthy of empathy, but it does not respect women as autonomous, equal partners in the human system. So that's the formula. That's what we do. And so that's why we know all about anorexia and protest it and place it within a feminist framework. Geez, in fact, there's this Susan Faludi wrote a book called The Beauty Myth. And in it, she got a statistic from Gloria Steinem. Yeah, from her book, The Enemy Within. So Gloria Steinem had been to some symposium regarding anorexia. And what they said was that about 150,000 women suffer from anorexia bulimia. But what she heard was 150,000 women die every year of anorexia bulimia. Yeah, that's more than 3 times the total number of traffic accident fatalities. Not very credible. But anyway, so Susan Faludi sees this statistic and she creates a whole crazy scenario around it of claiming that women were being starved to death. She said that they were comparable to the Walking Dead in Nazi concentration camps. The women starved not by nature, but by men, she said. All right. So what's the point of that? Well, the point is that if your gender politics is feminism and what you're all about is concept affirmation, then you're apt to get some very, well, just think of the poison that into the world. And then that statistic is republished everywhere. 150,000 women die every year of anorexia. Well, no.
And it creates, I think what you were trying to, well, what you did explain, but sort of this empathy gap, because then people are looking at it from that lens and they're just like, oh my God, this is awful, this is happening. Their focus goes towards that instead of looking at 2 sides of things. And it goes to the specific crowd that statistic.
That's right. That's right. And a really important point here is that when we understand these gender issues as mirrored, that doesn't mean they cancel each other out.
No.
You see, anorexia remains just as deep and ugly a reality, regardless of whether there's a mirror opposite to it or not. And the human growth hormone steroid abuse terrible results from that in the extreme of it. No, so they don't cancel each other out. They remain deep, important issues. What changes is the attitude. Okay, you don't get a Susan Flutie going crazy because she thinks 150,000 women are dying every year
Mhm.
of anorexia. You see, what you get are gender equalists, and like we are, and there's a dialogue.
Mhm.
So we can talk about anorexia, and when we're through talking about that, we can then talk about this steroid abuse, knowing that there's a balance to them. Not that they cancel each other out, but that they chill out a certain attitude that comes of thinking that men have the power, women are the victims, man bad, the overempowered oppressor, woman good, the innocent victim.
And hopefully we'll come to a better solution than consistently blaming men or some other crowd or some other thing.
Yeah.
Come to the real solution to both issues
Yes.
in the future.
Very definitely.
With that, I think we're running out of time. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Sam. This has been the Glass Floor Podcast. As mentioned, be looking out for future episodes on all the different issues mentioned today, and we will see you next week.
Bye now.
Subscribe down below. Thank you.